What's up, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the Southern Leisure Blind. Now, I have to tell y'all, I've really been looking forward to sitting down and doing this for quite a while. Because if you followed Southern Leisure Outdoors for any length of time, you know that what we do has never really been about just pulling the trigger, catching a few fish, running our boats through the marsh, or checking another destination off of our list. Those things sure are part of it, but they're not all of it. The older I'm getting and the more miles we keep putting behind us, the more I realize that some of the best parts of this lifestyle happen before anybody sets foot in the blind. They happen somewhere around 4 o'clock in the morning when you're running down a dark highway or a backwater bayou with a cup of coffee sitting in the console or splashing over the Yeti into the floorboard of the boat. They happen at a gas station in a town you've probably never heard of before. They're happening while you're backing down a boat ramp in the middle of the dark. They happen when the motor finally decides to fire when you thought it never would. And sometimes it happens when the ducks don't cooperate at all. And that's really what this podcast is going to be about. The duck hunts, the scenery, absolutely. But also everything that surrounds the hunt. The roads, the places, the people, the mistakes, the weather, our equipment, our Southern heritage, tradition, and conversations. And those are the stories that we normally don't have enough time to tell in our hunting videos. That's why we're calling this the Southern Leisure Blind. Because I want this to feel like less of a studio podcast and more like we've all just finished a hunt together. The guns are put away, the decoys are picked up, the boat's tied off, maybe there's a little mud on the floor, the sun's getting low, finding its home in the western sky. If you're watching this on YouTube, the backdrop behind me gives you a pretty good idea of exactly what I want this show to feel like. An old marsh camp, weathered cypress, water underneath it, a Louisiana sunset in the background, a place where somebody's grandfather sat, then somebody's father, then someone's son. Because that's what the outdoors has always been to me. It's an activity for sure, but it's also a connection that ties us to a special place where those special places created memories. And with Southern Leisure Outdoors moving into a new chapter this fall, I thought this was the right time to start telling more of these stories. So if you're new here, let me give you a little idea of what Southern Leisure Outdoors is all about. And if you've been following along for a while, I want to tell you where we're heading next. Because I think this upcoming season is going to be different from anything we've ever done before. Southern Leisure Outdoors has always been about getting outside and actually experiencing the places that we hunt and fish. Duck hunting is obviously a huge part of it. It's probably the heartbeat of what we're doing. But there's always been more surrounding it outside of the fishing. Our backwater boat rides, the marsh, the highways we travel, the camps we go to, the early mornings, the late nights, drinking too much and making up stories that are never going to be true. And I never wanted this channel to feel like one of those hunting shows where everything magically works, where the weather's perfect, the birds fly exactly where they're supposed to, cutting into the decoys at exactly the right time, making the right call on that correct shot. But real duck hunting, it can be ugly. It can be really cold. It can be super hot. It can be muddy. It can be super wet. You can drive a long way to find out that the birds moved yesterday. You can spend hours scouting an area that looks perfect and come back in the next morning to an empty sky. Or you can refuse to move because you're convinced the birds are eventually going to do what you want them to do. But they never do. That's duck hunting. And strangely enough, that's part of why we love it. If success were guaranteed every time we went, I don't think it would mean nearly as much. The uncertainty is part of the attraction. Everybody listening to this that duck hunts, you know what I'm talking about. We all watch weather. We all watch for the fronts. We look for when the wind shifts out of the north. We watch the water levels and the tide. We get the boats ready. We get the decoys strung up like it's time to go. Maybe we buy something we probably shouldn't, just because somehow I convinced myself it was going to make a huge difference for the season. Then when opening morning finally gets here and Mother Nature reminds you at about in 5 minutes, she doesn't care about any of your plans. And that's where the story begins. When I look back at the footage and the experiences that have become part of Southern Leisure Outdoors, some of the moments I appreciate the most aren't necessarily the obvious ones. I love a lot of the footage that we've taken, from the truck rolling down the highway with headlights cutting through the dark. That moment when everybody's awake but nobody's really talking yet, because every duck hunter knows that feeling. The alarm went off way too early. You're tired, possibly hungover from drinking too much the night before. You're wondering why you keep doing this to yourself. And yet, there's absolutely nowhere else you'd rather be than at the boat ramp. That its own world before daylight. The motor starts firing up. Somebody starts whispering. Somebody else who apparently doesn't understand that concept of whispering. You feel that first little change in the air when you get away from the truck and start moving across the water. And then everything goes quiet, and it's just the water and the sound of a gator tail loudly right behind you. And if you've gotten far enough back there, into the marsh, into your secret spot, into that cypress slough, or deep into the field, that silence makes it complete. That's Southern Leisure Outdoors to me. It's not just the moment when the birds are over the decoys, it's everything that got us there. We've spent time in old boats, new boats, kayaks, push-poled and pirogues in backwater places where sometimes getting there is almost as memorable as the actual destination. We've recorded from inside of the trucks. We've filmed at night. We've captured mornings where the scenery itself was worth getting out of bed for. We've also had mornings when you're staring at a whole lot of an empty sky. And I think there's a lot of value in showing both of those sides. Because if somebody watches our channel and thinks every hunt we go on is perfect, then I'm not doing a very good job of showing what this lifestyle really looks like. There's going to be mornings where we nail it. We get it right. The spread was set correctly. Birds decoy straight in. And then there's going to be those mornings when we don't. Those days seem to be happening, unfortunately, more frequently than we'd like to admit. There's going to be days when the birds make us look pretty smart. And then there's going to be days when they remind us very quickly that we're not. And I want to talk about those days too. I want this podcast to be the place where I can tell you what wasn't obvious in the video. Why did we choose that spot? Why didn't we move? Why did we move? What did we see the afternoon before? What was the weather doing? What actually happened? What did we get wrong and what did we get right? If you're paying attention, you're still learning. I know I am. Every marsh, every field, every flooded timber spot, they're completely different. Every weather system changes the equation. Every group of birds seems perfectly capable of teaching you something you thought you already knew. It's one of the things I want the Southern Leisure Blind to preserve. It's the lessons for me. Not because I'm sitting here claiming to have all the answers. Far, far from it. I want to tell you what I've seen. I want to tell you what's worked for us and what hasn't. And then I want to invite you into that conversation, because one of the best things about the outdoor hunting community is that everybody has a story. Everybody has that one hunt they still talk about, that one mistake they needed to make once, and that one place that means more to them than it probably would to anybody else. The last part becomes more important the older you get. When you're younger, it's easy to measure the quality of a hunt by what ends up on the strap. And don't mistake it. We're duck hunters. We want to shoot ducks, full straps of ducks. That's why we get up and go. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a successful hunt. But somewhere along the way, your definition of a successful morning starts getting a little bigger. You start realizing that a limit eventually becomes a picture. And unfortunately, that picture eventually gets buried somewhere in your phone. But the things people said in the blind, they somehow stay with you. It's that ride home. It's that joke that somebody told. The old camp that we used to be a part of. The sunrises and the sunsets. The sound of wings over your head before legal shooting time stays with you. The first duck a young hunter ever shoots stays with you. And learning about the people who came before us, it stays with you. That's one reason experiences like getting to be a part of a conversation a couple of years ago with legendary decoy carver Bill Harden matter so much to me. There's a connection between the hunting we're doing today and the generations who hunted long before GPS, Onyx, mapping apps, surface drive, cell cams, social media, new equipment. We all take that for granted now. The equipment's different. The boats are different. Clothing's different. Cameras have changed. But some things don't. A duck hunter still looks to the north wind and gets excited. A hunter hears geese in the dark and stops talking. A hand-carved decoy still tells the story. And a good hunting camp still has a way of making you feel at home, even if you're a long way from your own house. That's the Southern heritage. That's what makes this so special. And I want Southern Leisure Outdoors to be about preserving all of that. But I also want us to go see what's beyond our own backyard. And that's what brings me to the biggest thing I wanted to talk about in this very first episode, which is the Traveler Series. This fall, we're taking a bigger step with the channel. The Traveler Series is something I've been thinking about because I want to expand Southern Leisure Outdoors, hunting and filming to what it can be and what I've wanted to portray for my audience. I don't want to just show up somewhere and film a hunt, show a few birds getting shot, take some pictures at the end, and call it a story. I want you to understand why we're going. I want you to take the ride with us, see the countryside change through the windshield. I want you to see what the weather looks like when we get there, the little town that we stop at for breakfast or lunch, the hotel, the camp, the boat ramp, the field, the flooded timber, the marsh, or wherever that particular trip takes us. I want you to meet some of the people and the accents that they have. I want you to see how people do things in different places, because that's what travel has always been about. If all you're doing is taking your hunting style from home and dropping it into another state, you're missing the real experience. I want the Traveler Series to show the place. The Midwest has its own waterfowl culture. The Gulf South has its own culture. Southern Louisiana has traditions that look completely normal to us and completely different to somebody who grew up hundreds of miles away, like the habitat, the agriculture, our boats, our blinds, our species mix. All of those things, they're fascinating to me because waterfowl connect all of us into all of these different places, from the top of the flyway to the bottom. The ducks don't care about the state line. It's the scenarios and the situations. The same bird that somebody watched farther north may eventually pass over us down here. The migration connects people who may never meet each other. Another hunter hundreds of miles south is waiting for those exact same birds to arrive. And that's the flyway. And I want the Traveler Series to explore some of that. The miles on the truck, the new country that we see, and new faces, and hopefully new friends that we'll make. And I'm sure we're going to make mistakes. Actually, let me correct that. I know we're going to make mistakes, and a lot of them. Because you can't travel to new hunting country and expect to understand everything immediately. That's part of the deal. You may spend hours looking at maps, only to realize that what looked great from above doesn't look anything like you've expected when you're standing right in the middle of it. Maybe it's a pond that you saw in Onyx. Walk a half a mile in and find out there's no water. You may find birds and lose them overnight. Might hear somebody say locally, should have been here yesterday, they were thick. And every duck hunter knows that's the most painful sentence in the English language. But we're going to show that, because the Traveler Series isn't supposed to be a highlight reel pretending everything went according to plan. It's supposed to be the story of the trip. And every trip has a problem. Whether it's the birds not acting right, the weather not cooperating, no water, too much pressure, access, equipment. Sometimes it's decision making. But those are the moments I want to capture. I want you sitting at home watching and listening and feeling like you're asking the same questions we are. What do we do now? That's where adventure starts. When the original plan falls apart and you have to figure something else out. And then hopefully there's a payoff. Maybe there's a great hunt. Maybe it's that one special bird that means more than a limit would have anywhere else. Maybe it's meeting somebody who becomes a friend. Maybe it's getting to experience a kind of hunting we've never experienced before. Sometimes the payoff may simply be just getting humble, because I think there's value in that too. Some of the best stories in the outdoor world start with something going wrong. Nobody sits around a camp 20-something years later and tells a 30-minute story about the morning when everything happened exactly according to plan. There's always pitfalls, and there were always problems. They tell you about the trailer tire that blew out, about getting stuck when the motor wouldn't start, or an unexpected storm that popped up overnight, how they drove all night and skunked, picked the wrong field, crossed over the wrong line. That's what makes the story. That's why the Southern Leisure Blind and the Traveler Series are going to work together. It's going to show you what that adventure looks like. This podcast is where we're going to sit down afterward and talk about what you didn't see. Maybe there was an argument in the truck about where we should hunt. Maybe somebody noticed something while scouting that changed the entire trip. Maybe the 10-second clip you saw in the film took 6 hours to get. Maybe something happened after the cameras were put away that ended up being the highlight of the weekend. That's what I'm bringing here. Think of the Traveler series as a movie, and the Southern Leisure Blind as the conversation around the camp afterward. And we're going to build these stories together. When we're traveling, you'll start seeing what I'm calling the Traveler's Logs. Those will be little observations from the road. Maybe I'm sitting in the truck before daylight. Maybe we're standing in a ramp. Maybe we're pulling into a new town. Maybe it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon and we spent the whole day looking for birds and haven't quite found what we're looking for. I want to record those moments when they're happening, not 2 months later when I already know how the story ends. Because there's something different about hearing somebody say, I don't know what we're going to do tomorrow, when they genuinely don't know what they're doing tomorrow. That's real. That's raw. That's what we want to deliver here to you. And when you watch the Traveler series episodes, you're going to know how that decision turned out. And afterward, we'll come back here to the Southern Leisure Blind and break it down. What worked? What didn't? What would we have done differently? What surprised us? Who did we meet? And where are we heading to next? And that's going to give Southern Leisure Outdoors something that I've wanted for a really, really long time, which is the continuity. I don't want every video to feel like it exists just because or by itself. I want one story to lead into the next. You watch the Traveler series, then you come to the Southern Leisure Blind for the story behind it. Then maybe you see a short clip from the road that shows you something that didn't make either one. Then the next destination starts. And eventually, if we do this thing right, you're not watching individual hunting videos anymore. You're following a season. You're following our journey on what exactly we're doing and what the weather's going to do and how the birds react when we get there and if the decisions we made were the right ones. We want you to ride along with us. That's the goal. And I want to emphasize something else. This is not going to become a channel where we're constantly trying to convince you that you need the newest, most expensive piece of hunting equipment to enjoy duck hunting. I like good equipment just like the next person. I like nice fancy boats. Anybody who's watched us knows boats are a particular part of that lifestyle. I like new hunting gear, but none of those things are the reason the memories are made. A 20-year-old duck call hanging around somebody's neck may mean more to him than the most expensive call sitting in a display case or in someone else's bag. An old boat that somebody grew up hunting out of may have more stories in it than anything brand new sitting on a showroom floor. A decoy with half the paint missing may be one somebody's grandfather hunted over. That's the Southern culture we want to embrace, and we want to share that with you. Learn from it and go make these memories, because outdoor media has gotten very good at selling perfection on equipment and hunts, the perfect scenarios, pictures, perfect hunting dogs, perfect conditions. Those things just aren't true, because real life and real outdoor hunting life isn't perfect. That's what I want Southern Leisure Outdoors to become, better and better at showing. No manufactured drama, no fake problems, not trying to turn every duck hunt into a trophy hunt. Just real life experiences, real travel, real hunting, real places, and real people. If we have a great morning, trust me, you're going to see it. If we get our teeth kicked in, you're going to see that too. And if we drive 6 hours because we're convinced that the birds are going to be in this particular spot, and we get there and bust, we're going to share that as well. That'll probably actually make a pretty good episode for the Southern Leisure Blind, because that's hunting. There's another part of this show that I want to build over time, and that's the conversation. This first episode is me introducing the idea, but I don't want every episode to only be me sitting here talking. There are people I want to bring into this blind, other hunters, people we fished with, people that build boats, decoy carvers, call makers, people who grew up in and around southern Louisiana and Midwest hunting camps, marsh camps, people who have watched waterfowl change over the decades, young hunters who are just getting started, people from different parts of the flyway, people whose stories deserve to be told. And sometimes I don't care if somebody is famous at all. Some of the most interesting outdoorsmen I've ever met don't have social media or any type of following. They don't care how many people know who they are, but they've spent 40 or 50 plus years paying attention. And if you're willing to listen, they've got something to teach you. And that's a big thing here on our channel at Southern Leisure Outdoors. Hunting, it's all about education, and that's what we're going to learn here in the blind. Because traditions disappear when nobody records them. Old camps disappear. Hurricanes, they've ravaged them and taken them out. The marsh changes, the coastline changes, access changes, people get older, and unfortunately, their stories get forgotten. I think outdoor hunting media can do more than entertain people for just 15 minutes. It can preserve something, a heritage, a legacy, a way of life, even if it's just a story and a memory, a way somebody used to do something. I want the Southern Leisure Blind to become a place for that. And I want the audience, you guys, involved. When you watch or listen to this episode, tell me what you want to hear about, not just which product you want me to review. Tell me the stories you're interested in. Do you want to know what actually happens when we travel or when we're scouting and the decisions behind why and where we hunt? Would you like to hear older stories from old Louisiana waterfowlers? Do you want to meet some of the hunters from other parts of the country? Do you want to learn more about marsh culture and duck camps and public land experiences, the history behind the certain traditions that we talk about? Let us know. This is as interactive and open as we want this thing to get. Because if this is the Southern Leisure Blind, then I want it to feel like an actual duck blind. And a good duck blind isn't one person talking the entire time. It's an open conversation, stories and lies, opinions and disagreements, tons of laughs. And every once in a while, somebody stops mid-sentence, looks up and says, "Shh, get out, here they come." That's the feeling I want. And as I'm sitting here talking about the fall, can already feel that familiar anticipation starting. Every duck hunter in here listening knows what I'm talking about. It is beyond blistering hot outside here in South Louisiana. The heat index has been well over 110, and I can promise you we're nowhere close to wearing a jacket. But something starts changing. You start thinking about mornings again. Start looking at the boat and what needs to be done, things that need fixing. You pull out decoys. You start thinking about where you want to go. Start making plans with other people that you always hunt with. And eventually somebody says, "Man, it's getting close." It's where we are. And this year, there's another layer to it for me because I'm not only thinking about where we're going to hunt, I'm thinking about how we're going to tell the story. I'm thinking about the highway shots, I'm thinking about the maps, thinking about pulling into a place we've never seen before. And I'm thinking about the first time we put the boat in somewhere new and watching that first sunrise and that last sunset. Thinking about the nights back at camp, going through footage and talking about what happened. And I'm thinking about sitting right here afterwards and telling y'all the parts of the story that the camera just couldn't capture. That has me fired up because I think this is where Southern Leisure Outdoors can become something bigger than just another hunting and outdoors channel. Not bigger because of numbers, bigger because what the story includes. The hunting is the reason we leave home, but the journey is what gives us the story. And if there's one thing I hope people eventually associate with Southern Leisure Outdoors, it's exactly that. It's about the story. We went, we lived it, we met the people, we saw the place, we hunted it, we learned something, and then we brought the story home. That's the Traveler series. And that's the Southern Leisure Blind. One is the road, the other is the camp. And hopefully, years from now, we'll be able to look back at these episodes and remember not just how many ducks were killed, but what those seasons of our lives actually felt like. Because that's the part that slips away if you don't record it. You remember that a hunt was good, but you forget the little things. The name of the diner, the name of that little tiny bar, what song was playing in the truck when you were launching the boat, exactly how cold it was when you stepped outside, the way the fog looked on the water, the guy at the gas station who gave you a piece of advice that turned out actually to be right. That's the stuff I want to capture. And maybe that's the best way that I can explain what Southern Leisure Outdoors is becoming. This isn't about leaving behind what we've done. It's about getting closer to what it always was. It's duck hunting. It's travel. It's our South Louisiana heritage. It's the backwater. It's the good people. It's the new places and the stories. Tons of stories. So to everybody who has watched the video, subscribed to the channel, left a comment, shared something we've made, offered advice, invited us somewhere, or just quietly followed along, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Seriously. Because when you're building something like this, especially in the beginning, Every person who decides to spend a little bit of their time with you matters. And I don't take any of that for granted. Life's too short. We're going to keep learning. We're going to keep improving the videos. And we're going to keep improving this podcast. And most importantly, we're going to keep going. There are roads we haven't driven, and there's marshes we haven't seen. There are camps we haven't sat in, and bourbon that we have yet to drink. There are people we haven't met, and mornings we haven't experienced. And somewhere right now, probably hundreds of miles from here, there are birds that are eventually going to start moving south. And when they do, we're going to be ready to follow that story. So, welcome to the Southern Leisure Blind. This is where we're going to talk about the hunt before the hunt, the story behind the hunt, and sometimes the story about why the hunt never happened the way it should. We're going to talk about where we've been and where we're going. And this fall, we're taking Southern Leisure Outdoors on the road with the Traveler Series. Can't wait to show y'all what's coming, and I can't wait to come back here after those trips, sit down, and tell you what really happened. Because sometimes the best part of a hunting story starts after somebody asks, "So hey, how'd it go?" Trust me, we're going to have some answers. But until next time, thank y'all so much for spending a little time with me here in the Southern Leisure Blind. If you've enjoyed this first episode, please subscribe to the Southern Leisure Outdoors YouTube channel. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you want this podcast to become and follow along, because this fall, we're putting some miles behind us. The Traveler Series is coming. The next chapter of Southern Leisure Outdoors is right around the corner, and we're just getting started. I'll see you guys now on the next adventure.